warm welcome to a very special discussion, and this is a special discussion focused on higher studies, higher education for all those aspiring youth out there. So this is specifically about all those youth who are out there who wants to study in the UK. We have an individual who have done that and succeeded, and we're honored to have with us Mr. Talal Rafi. He is a global consultant, innovation, entrepreneurship and gender equality. Welcome to our program, Talal.
Thank you very much for having me.
So today we will be touching upon how an individual or a student who wants to pursue their higher studies in the UK can approach or do so in the best possible way. But let's talk about what you're doing right now and about your journey after graduating, Talal.
Sure. Thanks again for having me. And speaking about myself, I completed my degree some time ago, 2013. And I'm currently right now with Deloitte. I'm on Deloitte's global team on climate and sustainability, as well as being on serving on Deloitte's global ESG operations team. So this the primary motive of this is to develop a strategy on climate and sustainability to move the entire organization, which accounts for over 300,000 professionals globally. So one of the other things is that we have it's quite a very important topic, to be honest, and some nickname it saving the world. But then but my primary role there has been to manage the relationship with our alliance partners such as AWS, Google, SAP, Salesforce and ServiceNow. So that's what I'm currently doing at the moment. But before that, just to speak about my journey
after graduating.
So after graduating from the UK, I was briefly working for some time and then moved back to Sri Lanka. And I took the decision to become an entrepreneur. So that was my primary motive after coming back here. So I saw a lot of opportunity in this country and we wanted to do something. So initially we were into various things such as digital marketing. So that was something trending back in the early 2010s. And also organic foods. I mean, now the president is well on that way, but this was one idea that we had and we were working on some time ago. So what I would say one of our most successful ventures, when I say us, it's me and my couple of co-founders, was HubPoint, which was a co-working space. So at that time it was one of Sri Lanka's first co-working spaces.
But we see a lot nowadays, right? Isn't
yes.
it?
It's proliferated now. So it was, I mean, the whole industry has changed a lot. But back then it was something of, as an entrepreneur, we were just, one of the primary things was just looking for office spaces. So what we found was there was a lot of issues. For example, you have to negotiate with landlords, and then you had to sort out all the utilities and then the infrastructure, like for example, getting furniture. So it was a very cumbersome process. So what we thought was, like, as entrepreneurs, our ideal role should be solving problems in society. So we thought, like, if this is going to be something that's taking time, because as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest factors is or a resource that is very limited is time. So finding an office space takes around 1 to 2 months. So this time could be used for managing relationships with investors, or like
being more innovative,
upskilling yourself, or doing all the other related things like taxes, regulations and others. So if we can solve this, have a ready-made office space where all you have to do is just walk in and start your work. So that was something that was that kind of solved the problems for a lot of people. So that was my journey with entrepreneurship. But after that, I also took a thing into the development sector. I was working for a project under USAID. So one of the things was to create a mentoring platform, where I was the chief designer. One thing we did was, like, the thing was to provide mentorship island-wide through a platform. It was mainly focused towards empowering women and youth entrepreneurs. What we found was even well-established startups or businesses tend to have a failure rate of 50%. But with successful mentoring, it comes down to 30%. So that was the primary motive, because mentoring is something that's new, but in our Sri Lankan culture, a lot of people are willing to do it. So that was with USAID. After that, briefly I've been, like, though not full-time under the World Bank Ahead project with Moratoa University, which I can elaborate later. So here the primary move was to create an entrepreneurship ecosystem around the university, and at the same time I was like given the job of designing an entrepreneurship curricula for the university. So it was like we found that there are some of the brightest minds in the university, but the thing is like there is a move towards professionalism, which is not bad, but I'm saying we could also have more entrepreneurs, because after all, like when you leave university and you want to be a professional, you need a job. But then if we can convince someone to become an entrepreneur, they become a job creator.
And they own it, exactly.
And that's something like we definitely need in the country, because we have a very low percentage of entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka. Currently around, can even go, if you take informal channels, around 3%. While Bangladesh, it's 12%, Vietnam and Thailand come up to around 20%. So there needs to be a drive in that field. But with the World Bank project, I've been also working with a number of other organizations, such as I was in the Asian Development Bank Selection Committee for their Digital Against COVID-19 Innovation Series, as well as being on Chatham House, a team of experts. So they are the primary, as another field I work in is gender equality. So we were formulating recommendations for the G7, G20 countries on gender equality post-COVID. And the last thing would be working with the World Economic Forum. So currently I serve on their expert network, so where I'm primarily for the expertise of entrepreneurship, gender equality and reduced inequalities, as well as I co-chair the World Economic Forum's Global Plastic Innovation Networks Action Group. So here we are primarily looking at startups in the field of plastic pollution to solve problems, especially working with non-profit organizations who want to invest in them.
That's very interesting, Talal. And you also mentioned about entrepreneurship. Now, post-COVID and during this COVID pandemic, we saw a lot of, online platforms rising as well, isn't it? So I think women are also getting on board. So all your coaching would be put into good use. So now let's touch upon this important topic, whereas why you selected UK as the preferred country for your higher education.
So thank you for the question. I mean, it's been a good journey with the UK, but as far as the number one reason would be academic reputation. I mean, back then when I was doing my A-levels and all, the thing I heard was that, and it's true, like the degree from the UK is recognized globally. It was one of the best destinations to go and study in. So I always had a choice between going to the UK or to the US, but then several factors, I mean, the quality of the institutions in the UK kind of shifted me towards the UK, but also the fact that some of the degrees are much shorter to do in the UK. Like for example, a bachelor's degree, most of the time it's just 3 years compared to like 4 years in the US, or master's, which you can do much in a shorter while. So these were a bit of a factor, but also the other thing is that I wanted to be a bit closer, the travel distance from Sri Lanka to UK, those were also some of the factors that enabled me to pick the UK. And the last thing would be, it was sort of like, from what I heard with students who had gone previously, was that it was a very welcoming culture, and also about the diversity and inclusion there. So most of the time it's like different cultures, so a chance for me to like mix with people there. And this, for example, has helped me a lot, even in the current job.
Experience, isn't it?
And as well, yeah, sure.
Sharing ideas with people from different countries.
Different countries, exactly. So, I mean, like when I was in the UK, like whether it was in the accommodation or going out and meeting people, I met like being in touch with like a group would consist of people like from Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Russia, Japan. So it's a very sort of a diverse set of people and a diverse experience that, it has really helped me out in my career.
And we would also like to have an elaborated explanation on your experience as a student in the UK, and there have been a few myths as well, isn't it? Because people sometimes fear, that they would end up facing crazy situations if they probably go there and settle down, because they're going to be on their own.
Right, okay. So, I mean, that is one of the myths. I mean, I would say like one of the first myths would be people before I went, they used to say that the UK is quite expensive. and you shouldn't go there. But after going there, it's not the case. It also depends on where you are situated, because first, like in my journey in the UK, first I was at City University. I was doing civil engineering, though I unfortunately didn't get an opportunity to complete it. Then later I was at University of East London, where I finished my business management degree. So to an extent, it also depends on exactly where you are located in the UK. Like, for example, both my universities were in London, and also City was sort of in the center. So the expenses vary with, but if the lifestyle is quite reasonable, and if you compare it to like other places such as the US, I mean, it's quite a reasonable thing. So that is one myth I would definitely like to bust. The other thing would be, for example, let me think. Yes, the weather, of course. So everybody likes to make fun of the weather there. So it's like sort of the unpredictability. And
exactly.
You must have seen in the movies, they always show a sort of a gloomy London. But that is not true. Sometimes in most of the summer and all, it's an excellent place to be in. And it's quite a very lively place. But that would always be a downside, the weather.
Because we are all brought up in a tropical weather
yes,
condition,
exactly.
so they'll probably be like, if it's too cold over there, can we, bear with it and stuff like that.
Exactly, yes.
So that we might have to compromise, isn't it?
Yes, of course. But the upsides are huge, so I wouldn't really say that it was a really bad factor. But since just talking about like myths, I just wanted to bust that.
Okay. And Talal, you mentioned that the degree period is pretty shorter than the other countries which offer these courses as well. So tell us a bit about the variety of subjects they would cater and what they're really great at.
Sure. So I had the advantage of like going first into a civil engineering field as well as into business management. So one of the factors was that the amount of the depth of the degrees taught there is quite incredible, because as I mentioned, not just about diversity in students, but also lecturers. So I've had like Egyptian lecturers, lecturers from Israel, lecturers from China. So that was one of the factors. I mean, each module is like very varying. For example, when I do business management, we had to even had modules where we had to like up our communication skills when speaking to others from diverse cultures. So these things really helped, and really helped when you heard it from lecturers from around the world. And one of the factors was that these were very highly qualified people, like some of them mainly like who have background from the industry. So that was always an advantage, because sometimes like the thing is like most of the lecturers come from purely academic field. But here I was lucky to interact with a number of lecturers who had like industry experience as well. So that was like one of the factors.
How about the long-term impact, job opportunities and stuff like that when you qualify from the UK?
So when you qualify from the UK, I mean, the opportunities are quite great, because initially it has helped me a lot, the degrees. One, for example, if I speak about it, the diverse culture. As I mentioned, currently I'm working with how it has helped me in the roles I play right now. For example, I work with Deloitte's global team on climate and sustainability, or with the World Economic Forum covering a global aspect, or the ADB. So what helped me was, as I mentioned before, I've been in the university when doing projects. It was with very, very diverse people. So as I mentioned, there would be somebody from Brazil, somebody from Norway, someone from India. So working with different people, getting their perspectives, this has really helped me out. And also the fact that as somebody who touches mostly on diversity and inclusion, I would say that even and entrepreneurship. One of the things I want to mention is that Silicon Valley, many countries, like even teams from Russia, have tried to replicate it, but are unable to do it. One of the things is that they can bring in everything from investors, but one thing they cannot do is the culture. And one of the reasons why Silicon Valley happens to be one of the most successful ecosystems is because around 57% of co-founders come from outside the valley. Or like Fortune 500 companies, the founders or basically the CEOs, like nearly half of them are children of immigrants or immigrants themselves. So the diversity really helps when it comes to the UK. But the other thing, as I mentioned, is the ability to study there and interact with. A point I want to make is lecturers, because there I saw this thing that was very unique, was that we had these very highly qualified lecturers, and it was like more open to kind of speak with them. Like I could just go to their room and, you know, have a more you know, a friendly conversation on level with them. And it's just not just about that topic, but it's, you know, having a friendly sort of discussion on a wide variety of things.
It's like you're closer to the lecturer.
Exactly. It was very much closer to that. And also the thing about like in universities where you can like speak out what you have in your mind, you know, kind of like sometimes challenge.
Open for ideas.
Open for ideas. So those things have really helped, really shaped my thing as being some, as an entrepreneur myself. So it's always about, entrepreneurship is always about innovating, bringing something that's not been tested in, having, I would say, the courage to test something out. And the ability to, I mean, as an entrepreneur, many of the ideas I have brought in, or me and my co-founders have brought in, have been challenged by people. So being in the UK, studying in the university, being in a culture where I was able to like challenge it, helped me bring those habits back to Sri Lanka and helped me drive this forward.
And Talal, what I noticed when you spoke was you spoke about diversity and about teaming up with people from various countries, sharing ideas, experiences, and also getting contacts and being closer to the lecturer. So certain Sri Lankans, or maybe some students who probably are not very good in the language, might feel like they won't be welcome in the UK. What do you have to say about this?
No, I think that is not something to be worried about, because I had many friends in university, like for example, a group of friends from China who couldn't speak a single word in English, but they were able to study within 3 months, and the culture is very welcoming. And not only have they been successful, one of my friends, I mean, gone back to China, and he's even, he passed out on as a mechanical engineer, and he's gone back to working in one of the biggest projects to make aeroplanes in China. So that is always an example. And also it's like, because everybody comes from, there's this thing that most of the students are coming from outside. So the thing is that one unique factor is that everybody feels a bit comfortable, because everybody is leaving their families and coming there. So it's like everybody knows that the other person also, you know, is also facing a bit of a crisis, leaving their families behind, and it's a new country, new place. So at the beginning, it's always like very friendly to speak, get along with. And
it's about making a new family there.
A new family, yes. And also the ability to sort of network has also been a big advantage. As you know, London is, I would say, arguably the most multicultural city in the world. So there is like this ability to meet people. So even right now I have so many friends from around the world. So not only does it help to keep in touch with them, but later on, if there is anything, I have to reach out to them for work or as an entrepreneur, or for example, even an example would be like a couple of friends from the UK, we have reached out and even did trade, you know, export, importing. So these things are major factors.
It's about networking.
Networking, yeah, exactly. And it's very easy, because whatever you do, I mean, there is no better way to build a relationship than having studied at the same institutions. So even like whatever friends you have, still your school friends always remain.
They stand out, and they're always there to have you back, isn't it?
Yes.
So you also did mention that you're attached to the University of Moratuwa currently for some project.
Right.
So can you please elaborate on it? Because I think towards the beginning you did mention that you'll talk about it in detail.
Right. So at Moratuwa University, I currently sit on their Enterprise Operations Committee. So this is a committee which overlooks all the innovation coming into the university. But at the same time, I'm also involved with the World Bank's AHEAD project at Moratuwa University. So one of the things we do is actually two things I'm doing there. Is one is to create an entrepreneurship ecosystem around the university. So what we find is that some of the best minds, especially being an engineering university, is that we have like some of the best students in that field, and most of them, you know, come out. When they come out itself, they have a very high salary here, so they tend to work and then migrate. So as I've said this at many talks before, Sri Lanka, for example, we only produce 5,000 STEM graduates a year. So when we compare to India, it's 2.6 million. But then India is a larger
population is larger.
But per million, even India is producing 5 times more STEM graduates. So STEM graduates are needed for tech-related companies, engineering.
And that's the future, isn't it?
And that's the future, exactly. And most of the skills in the future will be in that field. So one thing is that we are deprived of, for example, as a very low turnout. And even that low turnout, either about of the 5,000, about 1,000 leave the country. So we are only left with 4,000. And we want to like try to make them create their own businesses. You know, if someone can create something, a larger company, and employ at least 500 people, I mean that's going to be big. Because especially in the tech sector, what we find is that the jobs are very highly paid. So I mean, other than just other industries, I'm not saying any other industries this thing, but tech industries generally usually earn in dollars. They have markets abroad. It also helps our currency crisis. So this is one area that we really need to work on. So that's where we have a number of stakeholders, like for example, USAID, the World Bank is funding it, the Employers Federation, and Nielsen. These are initially, and a number of others. So this is what we are doing there, creating so mostly having an incubator where any startups that have good ideas are given support through the university, and secretary services, accounting, they're all given.
Exactly, so because I think for startups you need an investment, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. And not just investments only, but also the other support.
Exactly.
Like for example, many startups we speak to, the minute you talk about the accounting requirements or taxes, they get a bit nervous. So what we do is like we, you know, help them in that, so that their focus is especially on creating the product and the go-to market. And the second thing is that I'm currently developing, as the chief designer, an entrepreneurship curricula for the university. So here again, it's like something that could be rolled out for the second to third year of undergraduates. Of course, it's going to be an optional thing. But what we find is that, as I mentioned before, we need to give them some kind of an understanding with entrepreneurship, so that in future they can be a co-founder or even start their own company by themselves, be a founder. So this would really help. But at the same time, it's also about the other thing is that, again, going back to what I learned from the UK, is that most of the studies in Sri Lanka is rote-based learning. Yeah. So that is just seeing whatever is on the board and then memorizing it, putting it on paper. So
then being practical.
Yes.
Right.
But I'm not saying it's bad. I mean, we have a culture of, for example, listening to the teachers, which is good, or listening to the parents. But there also needs to be a point where, you know, everything they say, we don't have to like agree 100%. There may be like 10 to 20%.
We should be open for discussion, kind
exactly,
of.
Yes.
Tanal, we've come towards the latter part of the show, final couple of minutes on the show. So any advice to all those aspiring youth out there who wants to focus on their higher studies?
Sure. I would say that the first thing would be, like a lot of mentors tell me, and some things that when I talk to a number of global leaders, what they say they wish they heard when they were much younger, is that always be a bit more ambitious. Set a high target, because what we find is that in the 20s, the main age, people just try to do whatever comes. So by the time they are 30s and they find out their actual ambition, it gets a bit too late. So always be ambitious and have a long-term strategy. And the other thing is, I'm not just saying this for being an entrepreneur, or I mean, even if somebody wants to be a professional at a higher level, is that always be aware that one of the biggest issues later on in life would be regret. So if you have anything and if you are very passionate about it, it's always good to follow it, because it's better to try something when you're young and fail a few times and say I tried it, rather than being at the age of 80 and regretting that you never tried something. So that would be my concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Talal, for inspiring everyone out there. I'm pretty sure there are many students tuned in, and this is kind of like an inspiration for the students out there who would love to pursue their higher studies, and also they should obviously, as you mentioned, focus on their goals and have an ambition and be ambitious. So hope you got a message out of this interview, and thank you so much once again, Talal Rafi, for being a part of the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
And with that, we conclude this special discussion. Thank you very much for tuning in.